Is what exactly did the passport bros actually do to anybody?
Let me answer this question, because I actually married a foreigner. Yep. And he was 100% financially for my bills. He took care of my child financially to the point that my daughter says she has 2 daddies. He's very active in her life, even though we haven't been together. And he's a great father. You ain't never heard me get on the internet and say, ladies, you want a good father for your children? Get your visas and your passports. You want a man that's going to pay 100% of your bills? Well, get your visas and your passports. You want a because you know all these men here in America ain't shit. All these men here in America, all they do is sit around and get women pregnant and up and leave. All these men over here are abusive, ain't no good. You better off getting your visa and your passports and leaving the country if you want a good man.
What's up, study group? Welcome to Black History Student. I'm your host, Black Butterfly. Today we'll be discussing the truth about passport bros, because the reality is definitely not what they're portraying it to be. Now, although many black men dating overseas refer to themselves as passport bros, in all actuality, passport bros are a group of men, mostly from Western nations, that have acquired a passport for the sole purpose of going to poverty-stricken countries to find what they call traditional women, but in all actuality, it's really affordable women. I find it very interesting seeing black and white, including Hispanic men, confidently getting on global platforms such as YouTube and TikTok to brag about having a passport and new access to desirable women. These men claim that domestic or modern women are unreasonable and delusional in their expectations for a mate.
How are men not the issue?
Because men are not complicated or difficult to please. That's women. Men are not sold nor do they buy into these unrealistic and idealistic, fallacious ideas of romantic love, such as soulmates and the one. That's women. Cliches such as happy wife, happy life, and the woman is always right does not exist for men. That's women. A man's feelings aren't conveyed to be the focal point of a relationship, nor is the relationship satisfaction and longevity predicated upon a man's feelings. That's women. Men are not the ones you have to simp and pander to in order to please them. That's women. Men are not the ones who say they want one thing and then end up with the other. That's women. Men are not the ones who struggle to operate within the confinements of reality or hold themselves accountable when things go wrong in the relationship. That's women. Men are not the ones who develop these entitled, spoiled, I'm always right no matter what because my feelings said so attitude. That's women. Men are not the ones who struggle with pettiness, spitefulness, and passive aggressiveness. That's women. Depicted as innocent angels in the media. That's women. Pick the wrong men and then complain that no good men exist. That's women. Unrealistic expectations, unreasonable standards, and shitty selectivity. That's women.
One thing that's conspicuous about men that divest from local women is that most of them are unfavorable to the women in their respective countries and communities. Instead of accepting reality of what women expect in a mate and doing what they have to do in order to meet those expectations, they travel to poor countries seeking women with little or no expectations at all. So for instance, they want sex with no commitment, or they expect the woman to pay for half of everything and be submissive, catering to them as a housewife would do to a primary breadwinner. They want women to work, cook, and clean and still respect them as if they are leaders when they lack leadership. Furthermore, black men actually get on social media to boast about having their passports while simultaneously disrespecting black women, referring to them as being unattractive or too fat and overall the least desirable women on the planet. But these are the same guys that are typically awfully insecure, violent to the eyes, abused by their black mothers or the women who raised them, completely impoverished and typically unemployed, having utterly repugnant hygiene, including deadly breath, possessing calcified plaque, especially at the bottom of their teeth, being associated with pre-diabetes or having diabetes. They're usually uneducated, suffering from little man syndrome, most likely bullied, especially as a kid, for their physical appearance or lack of material possessions. They have issues accessing their preferred types of black women. They're usually jealous of attractive men. Sometimes they're young and immature or old and worn out, but all of them are considered to be the male rejects in the black community.
Industry that exploits women anymore.
You took busy time out of your day to make this video. There can't be exploitation if the women are willing participants. Prostitution is legal in Brazil, bruh. Do your research before you make a video like that. Those women down there depend on this money, and not just from the passport bros, but from passport traveling men around the world and women as well. So know what you're talking about. Second of all, many of the passport bros are going down there looking for wives and all over the world looking for wives. Know the movement before you start yik-yakking. And then third, Brazil's got bigger problems than that. Seems like they got a lot of devil worship and occultism going on down there. So talk to them about that and get that fixed and leave us alone. Because we don't passport bros.
Now, black women have been battling this subset of black men's unnatural ideas of submission and lack of beauty for at least 50 years. You hear so many people claiming that black male and female relations are getting worse. But the only difference is that social media provides a front row view on a global scale of how problematic patriarchal ideals have impacted black relationships. Now, author Michele Wallace wrote a book titled Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman. In her book, she talks about the growing hatred between black men and women. She says that I am saying, among other things, that for perhaps the last 50 years, there has been a growing distrust, even hatred, between black men and black women. It has been nursed along not only by racism on the part of whites, but also by an almost deliberate ignorance on the part of blacks about the sexual politics of their experience in this country. Black passport bros justify their treacherous behavior by claiming that black women's poor attitude and supposed domineering masculinity leaves them no choice but to pursue women not only outside of their community, but also from an entirely different region of the world. But instead of just quietly living their lives, they choose to get on the internet to boast and emphasize that they are finally having options of women.
And I've had good relationships in my life, but I have never felt like a king or got true king treatment until I went out of this country.
Facts.
Where you're praised, especially as a black man, and one, I'm from America,
Yeah.
and two, I'm black.
For being you, right.
It's like the world is yours whenever you leave this country.
Listen, I've traveled to over 12 countries. He's absolutely correct. Case in point, he's in Thailand.
Well, I'm okay, thank you. I'm okay.
And one of the 12 countries that I've been to is Thailand. And what you just saw is absolutely facts. Passport boys, we up, what up?
Cultural critic and intellectual Bell Hooks wrote a book called Black Looks, Race and Representation, where she talks about black men's toxic and racist mentality towards black women, rooted in patriarchy and sexism. Bell says that this notion of black female acting in complicity and betrayal is so fixed in the minds of many black men, they are unable to perceive any flaws in its logic. Black men who advance the notion that black women are complicit with white men make this assessment without ever invoking historical documentation. Black women have typically acted in solidarity with black men. Even though individual black women adamantly critique black male sexism, most black men continue to act as though sexism is not a problem in black life and refuse to see it as the force motivating oppressive exploitation of women and children by black men. Most black nationalists, men and women, refuse to acknowledge the obvious ways patriarchal phallocentric masculinity is a destructive force in black life, the ways it undermines solidarity between black women and men, or how it is life-threatening to black men. When Bell Hooks refers to the male phallus, she's talking about their penis, using it to assert and define their masculinity. Passport bros believe that the more they use their phallus, the more masculine and alpha male they are. Now, of course, this is ridiculous and rooted in white supremacist patriarchy ideals. Bell says that patriarchal status is determined by one's capacity to assert power over others in a number of spheres based on maleness, to a phallocentric model, where what the male does with his penis becomes a greater and certainly a more accessible way to assert masculine status. With the emergence of a fierce phallocentrism, a man was no longer a man because he provided care for his family. He was a man simply because he had a penis. Now, instead of addressing white supremacy that keeps them subjugated, black men try to oppress black women. They fight to acquire the materials that white men say equate to masculinity, and fight to have access to the white man's woman. Initially, black men argued that women of no color were the better options for them. These women were said to be more beautiful, smell better, and were fit, feminine, friendly, cooperative, and submissive. Women of no color supposedly were bred from birth to submit to a husband and tolerate all that he's willing to dish out. Consequently, These proclamations made those women feel superior to black women. Their self-esteem was boosted, allowing them to hold their chest up high and smile in black women's faces because they were theoretically the prize. However, reality eventually set in, and these women realized that regardless of the man's financial status or net worth, they just weren't winning with this subset of black men. Because these men were physically assaulting them, making them the main breadwinners and baby mamas. They were sleeping with the enemy and everything else that moved. And also, these men were using them women as beards, which is a slang term for gay men that use women to pretend they're straight. And of all the joy that white women shared, thinking they were getting one over on black women, while simultaneously showing defiance against their colorless fathers, it wasn't even worth it in the end, because they ended up left with biracial children that more than likely will grow up with identity issues. Bell Hooks says blaming black women makes it possible for black men to negotiate with white people in all areas of their lives without vigilantly interrogating those interactions. Black men do not seek to understand the extent to which white supremacist patriarchy determines his desires. Many interracial relationships have their roots in racist constructions. By focusing in a stereotypical way on black women's anger, solidarity between black women and men continues to be undermined by sexism and misogyny. Now, most black men are angry about how white supremacy has stripped them of their identity, and they take it out on black women because they simply can't challenge their true oppressor. It's easier to blame the women who are just as oppressed as they are.
Why black women not submitting? Yeah. Why black women not submitting to their men? Because you don't produce nothing. That's why. Produce something. Be a provider. It's enough blame that we can put on our sisters. Yes, because they're not innocent. Let's just make this be clear. However, we are leaders. And if you are the leader, no matter what happens, you want the glory when everything going right.
Absolutely.
So you got to take the blame when everything goes wrong. You got to take the mud with the rain.
Attempting to achieve the masculinity assigned by white men, they failed miserably, aiming instead to spite black women by publicly proclaiming the daughters of their oppressors are more desirable. And when these passport bros go to other countries, they tend to pursue women of no color, avoiding black women in those countries altogether. They have no desire to pursue dark-skinned women since they are incapable of acquiring their preferred types in their home country. And because they can't compete with white men in their country, they run to poor regions, seeking poor white-skinned women who will entertain them for a fee. And even if these women are racist, that's irrelevant to black men, as they ignore how the black men in those poor regions are disregarded. Thus, after ruining their relationships with domestic colorless women, these black men have decided to leave the country to spread their delusion to poverty-stricken countries.
Destiny, if a guy travels to South America because he's into Latina girls, like, why is that bad?
Weak men go to other countries to find vulnerable women because they can exert way more influence on them than they ever could in the United States of America. You're telling me you're looking for a Latino woman and you gotta go to fucking Mexico to find it? Bro, go to California, go to Texas, go to New Mexico, go to Florida. You can find Latino women everywhere in the United States. The only reason why you go to Mexico or Central America is because you're looking for poor women that are gonna fucking flock to you because you're white and you got a ton of money. Or because you're black and you're fucking exotic and foreign from the United States of America. That's why they do it. You go to Eastern Europe and you go to South America because these are women that their financial options kind of suck. They're kind of like relegated to sometimes not the best of lives. Getting enough money to travel to exotic places, especially like the United States, usually out of reach, and a US guy will usually come by and pick one of these people up, and that's their ticket out of that situation sometimes. But people in like Germany, France, and the UK, and Amsterdam, Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, they're not looking for tickets to escape their country like somebody in Romania or even like Lithuania or places in Central or South America are. It's a totally different world in terms of like picking up people.
Now, have you noticed these guys aren't going to European or even Asian countries such as Japan or China? Because they're aware that most Eurasian women share the same racist attitudes as their white men and wouldn't dare entertain the slave class of men in society. These guys also know that their minimal funds won't appease these women. So they are specifically going to countries where most residents live in slums and where the American dollar can take them a long way. Bell Hooks says that most black men remain in a state of denial, refusing to acknowledge the pain in their lives that is caused by sexist thinking and patriarchal phallocentric violence that is not only expressed by male domination over women, but also by internecine conflict among black men. Alright, study group, before I go on, please take a few seconds to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to know when new videos are released or when I go live. This is a significant way to support the channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and do that for me. I'll take a moment of silence to let you do it. Okay, thank you, study group. I really appreciate your support. I really do. Now let's continue. The passport bros come across as very immature boys that women, especially black women, simply have never and will never want. You rarely see attractive men demeaning women by encouraging other men to publicly disrespect them. Most good-looking guys who have no problem accessing their preferred woman, they just don't speak this way. They tend to uplift women and offer other men advice to acquire or keep a good woman. It's only the scorned men that proclaims to the world that they've given up on domestic women and are now traveling to other men's countries to negotiate discounted prices for their women. Lacking pride and dignity, passport bros take pictures and videos to brag to other men about their female conquest while fueling their narcissism. Many passport bros are worried that as time goes on and more men jump on the sex tourism bandwagon, eventually they'll have to compete with each other. And remember, the sole purpose of going to those countries is to avoid having to compete with other men. These guys treat women like commodities, and therefore the more bros traveling to these countries, the supply of women may not meet the demand. For this reason, they'll need more resources to compete with other desperate men for the women's time and attention.
And your dating options, the quickest fix, quickest way to automatically upgrade yourself without spending years trying to become a millionaire and all these kind of things. Just get your passport and book out, man. Book out. Guaranteed. You go to certain countries around this world, man, your status automatically upgrades. When your status upgrades, that gives you an upgrade in the quality, definitely the quantity of women that you can meet and date. Man, when I travel to DR, I turn down women and turn down dates because I have too many options. And I don't know how many people can say that in the U.S. So get your passport, man, if you are not satisfied with the dating life in America, and see like Macho it'll improve. And also, man, don't go crazy, you know what I'm saying? These local countries, they have their own economy set up, you know what I'm saying? In some places, for instance, in the DR, you know, the average person pays between $100 and $200 a month for rent. You know what I'm saying? So if you, you know, papi dinero, you come down here, you know what I'm saying, you spending, you know, $200-300 on a female in a day, man, you just blowing things way out of proportion. You know what I'm saying? You're messing up the economy, the local economy. So now the next guy comes down, these women are gonna expect way more than probably ever seen. I ain't gonna say deserve, you know what I'm saying? You can get what you can get out of life, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, if you're an American man and you're not having the success you want as far as dating, you come to a foreign country and you have a lot more opportunity and access, you start to go crazy, that kind of throws things off, man. It makes an imbalance, if you will, in the force and the system. You know what I'm saying? For instance, I posted a video about what's going on in Sosua, Dominican Republic. A lot of guys going down there treating the place like a strip club, you know, disrespectful, loud, throwing money around. You're upsetting the imbalance of things, you know. I wasn't going down there in the 90s. I wasn't young enough, but I've heard stories of guys going down there, you know, having a nice time with a young lady for $50 or something, you know, for a couple of days. You try to offer that to a young lady now, man, she's gonna laugh in your face. Why? Because the local economy, the structure of things has been thrown off. You know what I'm saying? A lot of you guys going down there, going over there, acting crazy, disrespecting the place, treating the place like it's Magic City or something, man. So you have to be careful. If you guys are going to these foreign countries and going down there wild and throwing money around, you are gonna upset things to the point where now the women in these countries are gonna start to turn into what you guys dislike about American women. They're gonna have attitudes. They're gonna want more money from you. They're gonna expect a lot more from you than they usually did before, because why? You guys upset the balance in the system. So be careful, man. Don't be going to these foreign countries, you know, your eyes get big, you just go crazy. Because when you do that, you're gonna upset things, and things will never be the same like they were before, and things will turn into a facsimile facsimile of America. So be warned.
What I find very interesting is how unemployed black men were the originators of chasing women, especially another man's woman. Bell Hooks says that long before white men stumbled upon the Playboy alternative, black vernacular culture told stories about that non-working man with time on his hands, who might be seducing somebody else's woman. In Barbara Ehrenreich's book, The Hearts of Men, she acknowledges that the presence of black men in segregated black culture and their engagement in varied expressions of masculinity influenced white men. So although these guys have a white supremacist attitude, they've also added to the culture by influencing even white men to have an affair with another man's woman. But the ironic thing is, these men hate themselves and actually think they're unworthy, which is why when they do have a woman, they treat her horribly. They treat women that like or even love them as if something must be wrong with her. Therefore, instead of appreciating what they have access to, they lust after women that's totally out of their league and then get frustrated. This leads them to poverty-stricken countries to partake in sex tourism under the guise of finding love. But here's the thing. Black women are completely okay with these guys leaving the community for other women because under no circumstances are they willing to be re-enslaved just to make them feel like men. Bell Hooks says that most 19th century black men wanted black women to conform to the gender norms set by white society. They wanted to be recognized as men, as patriarchs by other men, including white men. Yet they could not assume this position if black women weren't willing to conform to prevailing sexist gender norms. Many black women had endured white supremacist patriarchal domination during slavery and did not want to be dominated by black men after manumission. On one hand, they did not want to be dominated, but on the other hand, they wanted black men to be protectors and providers. After slavery ended, enormous tension and conflict emerged between black women and men as folks struggled to be self-determining. As they worked to create standards for community and family life, gender roles continued to be problematic. Most passport bros had to sit and watch as the cool and attractive guys got the girls that they wanted. They were considered too lame and unattractive to get their preferred black women. These guys would try to get with them only to end up getting rejected, sometimes brutally, and this destroyed their self-esteem. So eventually they tried their luck with white women, and because these women's standards for black men are significantly lower than black women's, most time because they fetishize black skin and disregard physical features, then these guys get them, and then claim they are the better option.
Most dudes that I know who date outside their race, outside of our black race, were looked at as lames in the black community.
Yeah.
It wasn't a situation where it's like, okay, now I grew up aspiring to be with a white woman. What the story is typically I grew up, I was in my black neighborhood, I didn't fit in, the women didn't want me, I would shoot my shot, and they would curve me over and over and over again. But then when I went to talk to this white girl, she was vibing with me, and we just picked it up and then went from there. So now I date white women now. But it's not a situation where it's like, oh, no, I was bred, I was taught since young, and oh, no, I want to be the white woman. Black woman, hell no, I'm good. Now, when the same dude, that nerd, who was lame in the neighborhood, you wasn't given no opportunity, hell no, I don't want to go on no date. Just get away from me, da, da, da. The same dude 15 years later is a multimillionaire. And now he's dating a white woman, and you looking at him like, oh, it's so loud.
Now, the passport bros are too underprivileged to court or even take care of women in Western countries, especially since inflation has become rampant. Many of them lack possessions and can barely afford the basic necessities for sustenance. But instead of conjuring up a plan to improve their financial condition, they scrape up as many pennies as possible just to book a spirit flight to third world countries and scavenge for women, hoping to find one that's having a slow week. The worst part is that when many passport bros get to their destination, they don't even have enough money to sustain themselves, relying on the struggling women they came to exploit and sometimes other men for support.
I'm in Colombia about 3 months ago, and I was out there by myself because I invested in a couple of Airbnbs, and I was out there basically, doing the deals on them. I'm at a club that I like to go to. Now, I'm not there for the women, I'm there for the excitement. It's like when you go to Vegas, you're there to party. So you can party in Colombia for a lot cheaper than you can in Vegas. Bro, passport, bro. This fool had the audacity to ask me for pesos so he could take this girl home. I was like, what? Please. You an American and you're in Colombia and you asking another American for some money to do what? No, I'll pay for the drinks and the hookah things and all that other stuff, but I ain't giving no man no money.
So I went to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil this year for Carnival 2023, and there were people from all over the world there. I was in both Rio and Copacabana, and one thing that became conspicuous very early on is that passport bros were with each other, while white men were with Brazilian women. I was kind of shocked, but not really, because these women flock to where the money is. It's a worldwide known fact that a large percentage of black men are poor, and the women in these countries will tell you this. They are not fools, and they're totally aware of the game passport bros play. Many of them just go ahead and play it with them for the money. The women that reside in these countries where sex is their main economy have mastered male psychology. They can meet a man and within seconds know exactly what to say and how to act to get his money. They sell fantasies to men, especially passport bros, and real men know this. Now let's be clear. Some men actually do go to these countries to find actual wives, and not all of them associate with prostitution. But most of them don't go to these countries for love. They go for sex and the experience the women sells them. Most of the time they woman hop, bouncing from girl to girl, exploiting as much female and sometimes trans flesh as they can afford. And yes, these guys will mess with a trans woman if she looks good enough. And Rio is the main headquarters for the LGBTQ community. But then they'll pretend like they didn't know she was born a man. They knew. Trust and believe, they knew. They just didn't care. However, the passport bros aren't aware of the game, so they encounter beautiful women in these countries, and when the women put love spells on them, they misconstrue the spells for love. Then these guys try to convince everybody else that they didn't have to pay for the woman's attention, that their charm won her over. Well, everybody knows this isn't true because for one, most passport bros simply aren't charming. And most of these women have a boyfriend or husband or even children and would rather be with them than entertaining a passport bro. But because these ladies have to make money, they're forced to entertain the lowest men in powerful nations. I personally feel so sorry for these women because imagine if you had to deal with exploitative men to survive and then watch as they brag to the world that they got you for cheap, as if you were made in China. It's completely humiliating, degrading, and embarrassing. But again, the good news is that black women don't care. They aren't losing any sleep. The only thing that frustrates them is that they're the same color as the black passport guys and the world knows they belong to the black community. Black women are tired of being the targets of black men's aggression, taking care of grown men without money, ambition, or a conscience. They've been doing this for over 500 years and it's old now. So let the unfortunate class of women deal with them. And once they see the truth, there aren't any returns because the transaction is final.
I deserve to have a traditional wife. They want to go be a passport bro. And I'm like, bro, you're fat, you're broke, you don't deserve a traditional wife. You need to level up. The same way they want a traditional girl. The girl, she's going to be way more traditional back in my country. So trust me, she's not marrying you for love, she's marrying you for your green card. So.
Are you against passport bros or?
I understand the fundamentals of it for those who have done everything in life to make sure they are a man. But if you're not a man, I don't think you deserve that, honestly. If you don't have your life together, what makes you think you know how to appreciate a traditional wife? If some other guy who's living here who's never had an idea of what a male figure is in his life, he's going based off of whatever little content he picks from the internet. He's saying, well, I want a traditional wife, but therefore he doesn't even have like a credit score. He doesn't even have like his life in check. He's still driving the hoopty from high school. But you want a traditional girl, like what happens when you bring that girl over here? You're gonna basically make her a Western woman and she's gonna realize like this guy really doesn't have his shit together. Now she's gonna cheat on him.
I advise all passport bros to focus on improving their confidence and ability to provide for women, instead of going to foreign countries seeking women that they believe have no expectations. Just as they want traditional women to essentially enslave themselves to them without any expectancies, most women want men to be able to support themselves and not rely on them for sustenance. Others want men to act in their traditionally assigned role of protector and provider. And although the majority of the passport bros have no will to be more desirable, they fail to recognize that the women in poor countries expect for them to provide and protect as well. Once they realize that passport bros are unable to do so, they're going to avoid them just as domestic women have done. And then one can only wonder what these undesirable men will do next to find mates. Alright, study group, so go ahead and leave some comments below. Do you agree with my commentary? Let me know what you predict will happen to these passport bros if they continue to encourage each other to take advantage of underprivileged women. I personally think that the criminals in these countries are going to collaborate with these women and start setting these passport bros up. They're going to end up robbed or expired. Do you think there's any hope for these guys to rid their minds of patriarchal ideals and decide to focus on black families instead? Or do you even care? Let me know your thoughts. Also, if you have any topics that you'd like for me to cover, please send them to blackhistorystudent@gmail.com. This email is listed in the description section below. If you're interested in reading any of the books that I've referenced in this commentary, I've listed them in the description section below. And if you decide to purchase them, please do so using my affiliate links because I do receive a little commission for each sale and you will be supporting the channel by doing so. If you would like to read the article on this topic, please follow the link in the description section or visit blackhistorystudent.com. Finally, if you haven't done so already, like the video. If you're new, subscribe. And if you loved it, share it. Until next time, bye study group.